What's up, fam? Welcome back to our channel. My name is Tim. This is my beautiful wife, Pauline, and you're tuning in to another episode of the W Podcast, where you get wisdom in the word with the
Wheelers.
Hey, so we are grateful. This is the last week of the year. It's one of those weird things, if you're watching it live, where like part of the week is 2024, and then the other part is 2025. So if you're watching this, is actually the day it comes out is the last day of 2024, which is
woohoo.
That was so.
See you later, 2024.
That was so. What was that?
It's been a weird year.
So
I'm ready for new.
If you watched last week's episode, you know that we're in this year-end review 2024, watching our top 4 highest rated videos that you all watched on our podcast this year. And the first part 1, if you didn't see it, go back and watch it, because we talked about how do you deal with unexpected sexual temptation and how do you know if you're dating a good man. So you don't want to miss that. That was really good. But this week, we're focusing on the top 2 highest rated videos that you all watched this year. And the first video is actually a clip from 2 other godly men that we did a podcast with episode this year. And we talked about everything from submission, which obviously can be a hot topic, to why men need to pursue healing and what that looks like to have a healthy relationship, to how do you handle a INDEPENDENT. Do you know what that means? We talked about that. We go there.
Did you sing the song like that?
I probably did at some point. We went there, and it's really good because there's some women who struggle with that, who may feel like they're more strong-willed than others, and maybe they felt like that's hurt them in the dating scene. We go there, we talk about it, and I think you'll really find it helpful and entertaining to some degree. So check this out. Something to be mindful of, especially if you are someone who can be very direct in what you're saying. In a relational situation, sometimes you may need to over-communicate, especially if your partner doesn't receive the directness as well as you do. You may need to over-communicate more your heart behind it. And that's not a bad thing. Like, don't look at that like, oh, I got to baby somebody. No, you got to learn how to love the person that you're trying to have a marriage with. And you want to love them well. And I think over-communication is so key, because one of the reasons why people end up getting divorced is because they didn't communicate well enough. Because somewhere along the lines, there was a disconnect between what they thought the desired outcome of their marriage was going to be. And a lot of that comes down to lack of communication. So I just wanted to point that out. Like, that is so key. Like, the sooner you can learn how to communicate with the person that you're in a relationship with, and like actually learning how they think. That we part. Can be selfish. Sometimes we can be like, I'm going to communicate how I'm going to communicate. I'm going to talk like this. You're going to learn to receive it. And it's like, that's cool, but that's not going to end the way you want it to. And learning, you know what, I care about this person. They don't like when I come at them like this, or when I come at them at a certain time, I'm going to change that. That can make a big difference. So I just had to call that out.
Yeah, no, and that, like you just said, you have to learn their communication skills. It's the same thing with love languages. I might receive physical touches of love, but doesn't mean that she does. So when we're talking about, that's a whole different thing. We'll get into that later. But you know, it's just crazy to me, because it's like, you know, when you really learn to address it head on and you receive it out of love, it's crazy how much healing that brings in that. But going back to your question, in dating, how did I, I'm sorry, remind me of the question.
Yeah, was it, and we don't even have to go here anymore because what we just said was so good, but I was asking you, was there any hesitation, or not hesitation, not really the right word, but were there any concerns about when you get married, like, she gonna be demanding some things, and how do I handle that?
Yeah, I mean, there was a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. There was a question that I had within myself of really and truly, like, am I strong enough for this? Because it does take a different type of strength to be with somebody who is independent and who knows themselves. Now, I'm not saying strength to handle them, but strength to really build on yourself. Because it's like, okay, put myself under there. My wife is independent. She's a very smart woman. Finances were never my strong point. Finances are her strong. She knows how to save money. She knows how to do a budget, yada, yada, yada. I came in America and said, budget, ooh, we spending this money, baby. I didn't care. And again, now I'm learning to do a budget. You know, I was having this conversation with one of my friends the other day about, you know, marriage and leading in money. And, you know, he told me, he's like, you know, my wife is just better than me. And I said, it does not matter if she's better than you at it. She just wants you to lead in it. She knows that she knows more than you. Her goal is growth. She wants to see you lead this family. And I think the same thing in dating it's the same mindset, right? Like, she understands your weaknesses, bro, just as well as you understand her strengths. She knows what she's in this relationship for and or marriage for. Go with it. I mean, that's just, I mean, it's scary sometimes because you're like, I don't know what I'm going to do with.
Yeah.
Like, how am I going to deal with this? Is this going to amplify? Is this going to be 10 times worse? You know, I wasn't thinking about it the full spectrum. And did I learn a lot more about marriage and how things work in day-to-day life? Yeah, absolutely. I learned real quick that I did the dishes the wrong way my whole life. It's just things like that you're going to learn real quick. But ultimately, like, yeah, there was a little bit of a hesitancy at first. And I learned going throughout our relationship and now our marriage that not only, sure, it was the right decision, but it is the decision that changed the calling on my life. And not so much the calling, but the projection and the route and how I'm going to get there. I mean, you know, I really feel like who you marry is a really determination of whether or not you're going to fulfill all the things that God has called you to in your life or not.
Yeah, when you start, and even you can see it when you start dating, like it should be clear that your life is getting better because of the woman that you date and eventually marry. I definitely believe that because they're called to be our helper. They're called to help us accomplish whatever God has called us to do. Matt, do you have any thoughts around that? Because that's what Zach just said about, am I strong enough? Like, is that something that ever comes up to you, or when you're talking to friends? Like, is that something that y'all ever like, oh, I don't know if I'm ready to. Is that why you think some guys, and maybe not you personally, but just in general, is that why you think some guys, because a lot of times there's feedback that like men don't want to date or single men aren't really trying. Do you think some of that is the case? Not for you personally, but for other guys, like, I ain't really trying to have to deal with that.
I think that honestly, you have to get to a point as a man where you're saying, I am not going to allow my insecurities to be the thing that's leading me. I think at the end of the day, for every man, you have to get to a point where you're saying, okay, regardless of how I feel about myself, I need to address that first. So for a lot of guys that are single, I think they're in a place where they're like, okay, I'm just working on me right now. But for a lot of guys, maybe it's like, okay, well, I know that a relationship takes this and I'm just not ready or not willing to do that. I think that there's plenty of men that are in that population, but I think at the end of the day, you really have to just understand yourself and understand that your partner's strengths are your strengths. And I think part of insecurity says, oh, if they're good at this and I'm not, that means that I'm a bad leader, or that means that, you know, I can't be the person that they look to. When at the end of the day, if you're with a person that's strong in an area that you're weak in, like, that's a blessing. Like, being able to say, okay, I can allow this as an opportunity for me to learn from her, for me to be able to take something that I'm insufficient in and lead it to sufficiency, and be able to say, you know what, that not only am I making her better, but she's also making me better, just as two individuals and in a relationship. Where for me, if you know, okay, I'm weak in these areas, you can even say, okay, I'm looking to grow in these areas. Oh, you're strong in these areas. Bet we're gonna make sure that the areas that I'm strong in and you're weak in, you're gonna grow in, and the areas that I'm weak in and you're strong in, that I'm gonna help you grow in as well.
What kind of what kind of humility does that take, though, to really just sit here and be like, admit as a man, like, and typically, let's talk about it this way, in an area that predominantly men are better than. You know, for me, in my mind, like, it goes to cooking, right? Now, my wife's a better cook, but in this example, right, if I was a better cook, how the kind of humility she has to be like, oh, I can learn from that, you know, or I don't know, fixing things. Or, from my mind, I'm like, you've got to have this like level of humility on you and in you to sit here and say, especially when you talked about the whole submission thing and equality thing, when you talk about all of that and wrap it up and you're like, okay, I can learn from her. She has wisdom, prayerfully. And it's like taking that and running with it, right? Like let the wisdom overflow onto you just the same as you do for her, because the better that she is, the better you are.
Yeah. That's I think that last thing that you just said is really what it is understanding that the better you are and the better I am, the better we are. Like it's not about me versus you, it's about us together. So the humility comes in when you say, if I was perfect, I wouldn't need some other person in my life to grow, to prosper, to fulfill the call of God on my life. Like if I was perfect. So understanding that we're supposed to have weaknesses. We're supposed to have things that we're not strong in because we're human. And at the end of the day, if I'm with this person and they're stronger in that area, the humility can come by saying, you know what, that's actually the purpose that you're in my life, is to help me in these areas, and vice versa, for me to be able to say, for your example, like with cooking, like let's say like I'm with a person, I'm the better cook, she's not, like, oh, like let me help you, like let me show you exactly like what I do so you can learn how to do this too, you know. And it's not about like, oh, I'm better than you, you know, and I can prove it. It's about, hey, like this is something that I know you want to grow in, and I actually have the tools to be able to help you do that. And I think when you look at a relationship as a partnership, when you look at a relationship as I'm here to help you, you're here to help me, and it's out of love versus out of some sort of like business deal, you're able to actually say, you know what, like I'm glad that you actually are strong in these areas, because if not, then we gonna have to go elsewhere to figure this thing out, you know. Like how much of a blessing is to be able to in-house say, okay, like I can learn how to do the things that are going to lead me to me being the best me, for us being able to follow what God has for us in this life, you know.
Yeah, it's crazy because, like, and I'm sure Tim could be a testament to this as well. In my experience and with those I've talked to about marriage is often healing wounds that you never caused in the first place. And so talking about what you just said, when it comes to helping each other be better, it goes into every area, right? Like when you're healing different wounds. So like in my mind, we were talking about that cooking thing. Why is it that you aren't a better cook? Is it something that like your parents just never taught you, or was it something you rejected when you were young? And like you can just look at it at a deeper level, and that grows your intimacy together. Like it's crazy when you really start to look at and ask the question why. Like my wife does a really great job at asking questions, so much so that it can be annoying because it's just like, stop. But they're logical, right? Like when you think about it, it's like, no, really think about the why behind whatever it is, whatever you have a problem with, whatever you enjoy, whatever you love, whatever you listen to, watch, blah, 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 blah. It's like, if you really stop to look at the why. So why don't I like cooking? For me personally, I just never like staying in the kitchen because it's hot and I sweat. It's just not my thing. Like, that's just me. And, you know, and then now I love doing it. So like when I was a single man and living on my own for years, I didn't cook for myself. Man, I might cook like a pound of ground beef and some frozen vegetables, and that was my dinner.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
I'm loving it.
Every day, boy.
Every day, bro. I remember right before we got engaged, it was like January or February. I think I spent like $700 each month eating out. That's how much I just didn't cook at home.
That's how much was crazy. What the $700?
Bro, I was like, I looked at it, I was like, golly. Wow. I was like, imagine what I could have done with that money. You know what I mean? Paid off a debt, paid off, you know, whatever. But now I love cooking for my wife and daughter. Like I love just being able to provide a good meal, and it
look at the growth.
I'm telling you, it's crazy because it's like when you allow, and this is what I'm talking about, when you allow yourself to heal in areas that you didn't know as a man that you needed to heal from. I mean, it's crazy to me that like the challenge isn't a challenge out of a place of like beating you down, but like I said, it's calling you to more. It is, in my mind, I try to wrap my mind around a challenge a lot of times as a bandage and some ointment, right? Like we're taking this wound, we're cutting it wide open, and then we're going to wrap it back up and let it properly heal, not just scar up and get infected. Because a lot of us, myself as chief, didn't really ever deal with things as men from our youth and from our younger adult days. So it's like, she's sitting there, she like pokes something, and I'm like, yo, back off. She's like, oh, there's a reaction. Let's talk about that. And it's like, that's uncomfortable. I don't want to talk about this. I mean, there was, last week, the week before, we were doing our quiet time together, right? And we just started talking just about life, about our prayer points. I'm just Pray 21. So we're talking about like all these different prayer points. It's talking about, somehow we got into the topic of me and my youth. There was something that I didn't deal with, and I basically blocked out from my youth, that was uprooted, came out, completely undealt with. And so now, I mean, you think about, I don't know, leaving a piece of food underneath a bed and underneath the rug for 20 years. What is that going to look like? It's going to have mold. It's going to be disgusting. It's going to be rotted. And it's like, okay, now let's deal with that. And it's crazy to me because it's like, I told her, this is the most uncomfortable thing that I've ever talked to you about in my entire life. Hands down. I don't want to talk about it. And she said, tough luck. Let's talk about it anyway, because that's what's required in marriage.
Yeah. Love that.
All right, fam. I hope you enjoyed that as much as me. Shout out to my brothers, Matt and Zach. Really appreciate y'all for coming through on the pod this year. And hopefully in 2025, we are looking to do more guest episodes again. I know a lot of people like when we do that. We didn't do that much in 2024 just because of life. But definitely something I'm looking forward to doing some more in 2025. But the number one rated video, do you have a guess of what it would be? Don't be looking. I don't remember nothing we recorded.
Oh my gosh. I didn't sleep half this year, so.
So the number one video that you all watched this year was practical ways to build a lasting connection with the person you're dating. Which is really cool because when we first posted it, it wasn't like looking like it was going to be our most watched video of the year. But it's pretty cool to see that, because I think that's a really important topic. Mm-hmm. And sometimes the topics that we posted I think are really important. Sometimes people don't be watching the way I think they should. So it's cool that this one worked out, because a lot of times we get into relationships and we get into marriage and we wonder, like, why didn't that couple make it? Mm-hmm. Like, what was it about them? They were so happy on their wedding day. Why didn't it work out? And it's because they didn't learn the necessary principles that you need to learn to have a healthy relationship before they even got married. Mm. And that's some of the things that we talk about in this video, is we get practical on how do you build a connection? Mm-hmm. How do you get this woman to be so in love with, how do I do it?
How am I going to tell them how you do something?
How about
you tell them how
in
you
love
do it?
with me?
You tell them how you do it.
Obviously, I just be annoying her all day. But we give some practical tips, and I hope you enjoy this clip. I thought about why it's good to build a good, strong connection in dating is because, to be honest, connection is like a bank. And at some point, there's going to be a withdrawal in the relationship. So if you think about a connection bank, quote unquote, if we're continuing to build each other up and learn each other and have fun, and then an issue pops up where maybe I did something to offend you or you did something to offend me, and then there's a withdrawal from that connection bank, it's going to be easier to get back to normal if we have money in the account already, for lack of a better word, of strong connection. But if we had no money in the account, there's going to be a withdrawal fee, and that's going to pull on our relationship and make it harder. And I'll be honest and share, and we've kind of touched on it before on the podcast, but I think about our relationship when we were dating. We had an issue, like the biggest issue, honestly, in our relationship, maybe to date. We've had bigger? I don't know. Yeah, right. So the biggest to date, where I did something that Pauline did not like and disagreed with, and my decision and how I came about it, And honestly, I think if that would have happened maybe earlier in our relationship, or if we didn't have as strong a friendship at that time when I made the wrong decision, I think that could have really cost us. I think we wouldn't have we wouldn't be sitting here today, because I don't know if our connection would have been strong enough for it to be worth it to continue to fight through that situation. And the Bible says in Proverbs 18:19, it says, an offended friend is harder to win back than a fortified city.
Sheesh.
Arguments separate friends like a gate locked with bars.
Yeah.
And this is how a marriage can turn from best friends and spouses to a roommate situation real quick.
I mean, it's a really good example. I mean, it's a really, that verse is just so great for this situation, because it's so, and like, this is literally how we even started kind of doing relationship work. I remember one time you were saying, it's so kind of, maybe not fascinating, but interesting to you how a couple can be so in love. Like, everybody's in love on their wedding day, or most people. Maybe not if you're like arranged or something, but that's not that popular in today's culture. But, like, everyone's so in love and so excited when they're dating and when they are engaged and, heading into their wedding day. And then, several years later, you look up and these same people are divorced, separated, breaking up. And it's like, how does that happen? And I think that it is just, even for if you haven't been married, or you haven't been through something like that, you just think about most people who have broken relationships, friendships, family, whatever. It's not the people who have offended you the most are not random people on the street, or people like trolls in your comments. Like, you don't care about what those people say. You don't even know them. But the people that have hurt you the most are the people who have been the closest to you. And obviously your spouse is the closest person to you. It's a sanctified, sacred relationship. And when they start, kind of turning on you, or how it feels, that they're turning on you, or there's separation, there's distance, there's lack of empathy, all of those different things, like, it hurts way, way, way more. Like, I could see how it is harder to win back an offended spouse than it is a fortified city, like the Bible says. Like,
yeah, because when the challenges of life come, and they will come, if you don't know how to communicate, which is a huge key to building a strong connection, is being able to talk to your partner, you're not going to make it. Or not that you're not going to make it, but it's going to be really hard to make it. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to work twice as hard if you don't know how to communicate with your partner in a healthy way to build a strong connection. And honestly, it's better to stay healthy than to try to get healthy because you never even started and had a solid foundation in the first place.
Well, that's what they say. And, like, prevention is better. What is it? An ounce of prevention is better than, like, a heap of a cure or something like that. It's better to...
Yeah, I mean, I think they might understand what you're trying to get.
It's better to prevent a bad connection.
An apple a day keeps the doctor away. Is that what you're trying to say?
No.
But
prevention is better than a cure.
I think about something we learned years ago, the whole concept of a repair attempt.
Yes.
And that's simply when you're having an argument or a disagreement with your partner, a repair attempt is something, it can be very small, that you can go to that can quickly diffuse the situation.
Yeah, it's kind of like infusing joy and like making someone laugh.
So if Pauline and I are arguing about something and say we had a code word that was cheese balls, that's not it. That's not a thing for us.
Do we have a repair attempt?
I think we have looks. I think that's our, like, we just give each other like a funny look, like,
come on, boy,
like,
get it out.
Like, you good? Like, what are you doing? Like, whenever one of us has an attitude, like, we can have a repair attempt of just kind of looking at each other, or like.
Oh, so you have attitude?
I admit you have attitude sometimes.
Oh, okay.
Hey, we're not all perfect. None of us are perfect.
Okay.
No, of course
none of you are holy. I have my
times. I have my times where I have attitude. I mean, I was thinking about this past Sunday. I don't remember what, but we were driving home from church, and you did something that got on my nerves. And I just remember I turned around, and because I probably did not respond in the best way. And I just remember I turned around and you were giving me a look.
Yeah, I do. I was looking at the side of your face like, are you going to get over this?
And I instantly started laughing. I already knew. And that's the good thing about dating somebody who fears the Lord and has a relationship with God. Because already, like, the whole time I'm, like, annoyed at her, I'm also in my head, like, I probably didn't respond the best way. I don't want my prayers to be hindered. I don't want to dishonor God, yada, yada, yada. So let's get to the practical things, because that touches into one of the practical things I had and that we'll get to. But I wanted to give, like, 4 or 5 practical things that we actually did when we were dating. And please add to it if I'm forgetting.
Yeah.
I'm forgetting some
this
stuff.
This isn't really practical, but I'll help you out.
Okay. So my first point that you just essentially shot down and just...
Do you want me to make it better?
No, not yet. Because I think it's good already.
Okay.
Have fun.
Yeah, say it out loud. Say it out loud.
Okay. But that's just the the topic. There's a sub topic that explains what that means.
Please.
So when we were dating, and still to this day, for the most part, it's harder a little bit when you have kids and they get sick and just whatever life. But we went on a date every week when we were dating. And when I say we went on a date, I mean it was planned and it was organized. It wasn't, let's just hang out, let's just kick it, let's just watch a movie and chill. Like there was some, I know, there was some intentionality, and there was a place picked. There was, I'm gonna pick you up at this time, type of situation. And when I say a date every week, it doesn't have to be a lot of money. Like I'm not talking Roof Chris or whatever else may be expensive. It could be a chill picnic. It could be a walk.
Picnics are so cute.
It could be a walk along a boardwalk now that it's a good weather or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't have to be... The whole point of it is that you have intentional time where you're getting away from the busyness of life to just focus on you two, to build connection, to have conversations. So many times, especially early on when we were dating, Pauline would come to the restaurant with questions that she found online to help us get to know each other better.
Yeah.
And I think that is really important. Now, what do you guys say to make it better?
I would have, that was good, but I would have called it maybe like, okay, because this is practical tips. It should be have like a weekly date or a weekly.
Ain't that what I just said?
But it was have fun.
Yeah. And then underneath that, we get to it. All right, let's get to the next thing.
Anyway.
Since you don't really have nothing to add, praise God. So the second thing...
I will say this. So I think that this still applies even if you were a long distance. Obviously, it's harder if you have like a very dramatic or significant time difference. But I still think that like FaceTime dates and like we all have lived through a pandemic at this point, so we all know how to get creative with
watch a movie together on FaceTime.
Yeah, spending virtual, like time with somebody virtually.
Go to Chick-fil-A together on FaceTime, eat it together in the car.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many games and there's things that you can do to like build connection points virtually and spend time together. I just think that, it's really fun when you first date, especially like if you're super young, to just like, oh, come over and watch a movie, or I'll go over your place and watch a movie, I'll bring over, take out and all that stuff. And like if you've had a rough week or something like that, and like it makes sense with your boundaries, I can see how that's kind of attractive. But you want to again practice how you play. You want to date the way that you want to marry. And yes, it is very exciting when you first get married to just like veg out together and watch movies and all that stuff until your spouse starts falling asleep on the couch. Then it's not much fun anymore. But you also like just being married just for this like short time that we have. Like there's so many times that we don't want to go out on our date night because we're just so tired. But we're always glad that we do in the end. It's kind of like, going to the gym where you're like, I don't want to go. But then in the end, you're like, long term, like, this was the right decision for me. And it's all about habit building. So I just wouldn't resort to doing chill, lazy date nights all the time. Like, if you are the type of couple that just hangs out at home, like, every Friday, every Saturday, whatever, I mean, that's a great opportunity for you to start going out more. The fact that you guys have, a rhythm of hanging out once a week or more, you have to be careful with that too. Just challenge yourself to actually go out and be intentional, because you don't want to continue that into marriage, and then like you gotta fight for it when you have kids.
Yeah, because inevitably it's going to get harder.
Yes.
So you want to
the more
start out
freedom you
pretty
have
strong.
now.
All right, fam, that is it. Yo, thank you for rocking with us for another year. I can't believe we've been doing this for 4 years now.
Praise God.
Making video content that will help people learn how to have a healthy relationship.
Yes.
And I'm grateful to be able to do it with you.
Me too.
Let's run it back. 2025.
We'll see you guys next year.
Let's go! Thanks for watching this video.
To get more Christian relationship advice, subscribe to our channel.
And make sure you check out our other videos as well.